Hi, welcome back to Dataedo Bootcamp. I'm Richard from the Data Success team. In this video, we're going to talk about user management, which is the process of assigning users to groups and associating those groups with roles and permissions to control what visitors can see and what they can do when they visit Dataedo Portal. We are in Dataedo Portal. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen is the settings icon. Only people who have administrator privileges will have access to this. But if we click there, we can see this will give us access to the user management module. This has several tabs. Let's work through those and explain what they are. On the Active Users tab, we can see a list of all of the users who have access to this instance of Dataedo Portal. On the Groups tab, we see the groups that people can be assigned to. On the Roles tab, we see the permissions that those groups of people have. And then on Deleted Users, if anyone's access to Dataedo Portal has been revoked, that they will appear here. They're not actually removed from the database. They are simply marked as deleted so that any of the comments or actions that they took within Dataedo Portal will be retained. And of course, we do have the option to restore them later if there's a need. And when they're restored, all of those comments and actions will be reassociated with that person, so we don't lose any information. As I mentioned, Dataedo ships with all of these groups and roles in place. Chances are very good that these will suffice for your case. But in case they don't, you do have the ability to modify them. So if we look at Data Steward, for example, we can see the permissions associated with that role. And these are detailed permissions, what they can actually do as an editor of Dataedo. And this is true for each of the other groups as well. We can see what permissions do they have to interact with the data catalog. We then move to groups where the roles are associated with groups. The best way to think about this is roles are where the permissions are defined. Groups are where the users are grouped into these groups that are then associated to the roles and permissions. So this is the key right here that allows us to associate groups and roles. If we look at one of these, for example, data stewards, we can see under their permissions that this gives us the scope of what they can see. They can see the whole repository, and what can they do. They have data steward permissions. As we saw, those are detailed permissions. And this tells us these people can do these things with this scope. Same goes for other groups. Let's look at explorers, for example. Here we can see they don't have access to the entire database. They have access to portions of the catalog. And then within that, they have typically the explorer role. But in these cases, for the worldwide importers and the importers warehouse, they have the viewer role. So these don't have to match all the way. They can have different roles based on different parts of the data catalog that they have access to. Finally, let's look right here under viewers. Notice that group is default. What that tells us is that anybody who becomes a new user into Dataedo Portal will be assigned to this group. Users need to be in some group, or when they log in, they will get an error that says they can't do anything. So everybody has to be in a group by default, and by extension, when we look at permissions, every role has to have access to the web catalog. If they don't, as I say, they will get an error. So two requirements. All roles must have access, web catalog permission, and all people must be assigned to a group. So this takes care of that right there with the default assignment. Then the final step is simply to assign people into the groups that are appropriate. For example, if we look at Linda Ortega right here, we can see she is a data steward. And if we look at Andrew McKay, he is an explorer. All people will be associated with these groups. It is possible to assign people to more than one group. For example, here I am a data steward or an editor, and I am also an administrator. It is acceptable to put people in more than one group. So you will spend time thinking about the people, thinking about the groups, and thinking about the permissions and making them all work together. The way I recommend, if you need to make changes, is start on the roles end. You can add a new role, and there you will assign the permissions appropriate. Remember, everybody needs Access Web Catalog, and then you can further define that as needed. Then you will go to groups, and if you need a new group, you can do that right there, and it will give you a window just like this, where you can add a role to that group. Remember, this is what can they see, and this is what can they do. So you define that scope. And finally, you go and you assign the users to that group. So it's a chain reaction where you assign users to groups, associate groups with roles, and define the permissions for those roles. If you do have questions on any of this, please feel free to reach out to the success team at success@dataedo.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you work through any questions. The next video, we will be talking about installing Dataedo Desktop, which is important for any of those people who have editor licenses. So let's move on to that.